Hi guys, and welcome to the filmmaking workshop. And today we're gonna give our top tips for telling your international story. So first off, my name's Ellie, and I've been a Europeer for some years, and my degree was in filmmaking, and I like to dabble now. So that's my experience, and I'll hand over to Alex.
Hi guys, I'm Alex. I also did my degree in film and film and media, and I think filmmaking is fun and it's a great way to share your international stories, and that's what we're here for. So let's start. So the first thing we'd like to do is just to show you some different film techniques. So the first one is just about color. As you can see, it's like two very different images. The top one is kind of, unsaturated. It looks a bit, I don't know, a bit sad even, I would say. It's a bit, it's not a very pleasant atmosphere, whereas the bottom picture is quite, it's a very different feeling you get from the picture because there's so much color in it. And I think just having this kind of eye for like watching a film through the lens of putting attention into like colors and different framing and so on, it really changes your perception of how you watch films. So we just want to share a few other images.
So here we can see what these photos kind of demonstrate is the use of how you frame your subject, like evokes different emotions. So maybe if you want to really emphasize the emotion of someone and create that emotion in the audience, then you want to go for a close-up, because there, you can see those facial expressions. But then equally, it depends on the emotion that you want to convey. Because for instance, in the second image, you have two people quite far apart, probably social distancing, and they are kind of, that frame could portray loneliness, like given the context of the film, because of the way the subject's framed, being lots of space and then being small. So it really depends on what the story is that you're trying to communicate, and then to set up and frame your subject so that those decisions kind of evoke that meaning. And so, yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. And this is another slide of just showing you how lighting can impact your image. So the top one is, it's a film noir film still, and it just shows you how it impacts the image if you don't have a natural light source, and if you have very little light. There's just one light source, and it's very dark, it's very mysterious, you can't see the face of the person. And then the bottom one, the bottom picture is, well, it's only natural light, it's only daylight, so obviously that it has a different atmosphere. And I think, well, personally, I actually like to use daylight, at least when it comes to some like more documentary style videos. And I don't think you always need professional light, like a professional light source. I think it's very beneficial, but you don't have to invest a lot of money into like a lot of good lighting sources. I would not worry about it too much. We'll talk a bit about lighting later. I think it's more about how you use the available light you already have, instead of worrying a lot about how to set perfect professional lighting situations.
I'm there with you, definitely. So yeah, so I suppose when it's the first, like when you're first thinking of your story and you decide you want to create a film, the best thing to do is probably to make a plan, which goes against my natural instinct, but it does really help because it makes everything so much easier, and it's really like helpful for the process. So the best way to plan in filmmaking is you might write a treatment. So kind of you have your initial idea and then you're developing that idea on paper or bulking it out. And it's really important maybe to have a question or a sentence that is kind of, if you boiled all your ideas about this film down, this would kind of be the essence of what it is. So maybe it might be like, why do young people very specific, the more specific the better, even though my example was not specific and half-formed. And then what you want to do once you have that one sentence that kind of expresses your idea, and I would say if you can't put your idea into a sentence, then your idea is not good enough. Well, it is good enough, it's just not fully formed yet, and you need to keep going. So then I would break it down visually in scene by scene, shot by shot, into a storyboard, so that you kind of have a visual plan, and then it's really easy to see the variety of shots that you've got, and basically you have your blueprints of the way you're going to go forward. Okay, over to you, Alex.
All right, let's go to the next slide, which also is very important. Be prepared. Whatever you do, it's always good to have some idea in mind of what you actually want to film. So before you start filming, please make sure you have all the tools, including charged batteries and maybe a charger as well, because that's kind of like the most obvious thing to forget. It happened to me, and it's not a nice feeling to forget batteries or your charger, so make sure you always have enough. And actually sometimes just using a phone is enough. You don't have to have the most professional camera at all. There's a lot of good feature films that were actually filmed on phones, on smartphones, so you know, it's not a requirement to have a good setup. But if you do have equipment, please make sure you have everything you need. You have enough space on your SD card. You have everything, like in terms of the tripod. Maybe test it out before you actually film. Test out if it works. And just, you know, it kind of sounds obvious to just tell you guys to be prepared, but actually some of these things are really, it's worth taking a note and just writing a small list of all the things that you have to do before you start filming, and just to like have a small checklist of what you have to prepare. And then if you, well, let's imagine you film some kind of documentary style video, it's good to have some interview questions written down. Maybe you can have some of them in the back of your head, but actually, you know, writing some things down can help you a lot. And also, obviously, when it comes to writing a script or a storyboard, take all of these with you when you start filming.
Yeah, so, and I would also say as well, like on the note of preparation, that also be aware of kind of the permissions you need as well. While it's just you and your phone, you're probably gonna be fine, or a little handheld camera. But if there's children involved, like I would not film those. And also, if you're in a team of more than 5 or something like that, or put in big equipment around, then sometimes you attract attention. So I think now, like, because we're quite using handheld things, that is great because nobody notices us. And on that note, I would say one thing about hand holding a camera is it can be very shaky depending on like kind of what you have. If you're lucky enough to have some kind of in-camera stabilization, maybe in your phone, or if you have a camera with that or a lens with that, and then you might be okay. But stable footage is kind of the difference between what can look at like a well put together film versus what can look like an amateur film. Not that we have a hierarchy, because that doesn't exist. But yeah, shaky footage can be really distracting, and it can draw attention away from the story you're trying to tell. Unless, for instance, you're filming a horror scene or something like this, and then that's the emotion that you want to evoke, then it's appropriate and you can use it within your creative kind of realms. So I would say the world is your tripod. You don't need a big heavy duty tripod, because I was actually looking on Amazon the other day and they were like £400 or something, but you can get like little ones as well that are like maybe £20. You know, it can be expensive or as cheap as you want to be. So you kind of want to be a bit creative with it. Bookshelves, walls, anything like that is great to use. But also the way that you hold your camera or your phone. For instance, if I like zoom out here, I have a few jumpers on. If you're holding your phone and you tucking your elbows in and you're holding it like this, you've kind of made a stronger base for yourself. You've given it a kind of a bit more of stability. So just think about how you're using your camera, and think about just trying to keep as stable as possible if that's appropriate for your film. Aye. Over to you, Alex.
Okay. Well, that's a very simple one as well. Just get enough footage. It's good to be prepared and it's good to keep it short and simple. But when it comes to being on set, let's say, let's say you have an interview situation, it's good to get way more footage than you're actually gonna use in the final video. Because you know, you can always edit out things, you can always cut things, you can always narrow it down. But having different perspectives and having different framing is crucial to make your video more interesting and to make it more entertaining even, you know. It's really important to get enough footage in case there is something distractive in your image. It's really important to make sure that if you have another perspective of the same kind of setup, you can always cut to the other setup, just in case. So when it comes to framing, we're going to talk a little bit more about what kind of framing you can use to get more variety in your shots.
Okay, on to composition and rule of thirds. So when you're thinking about framing your image, one of kind of the main rules that you might hear of is the rule of thirds, or maybe it's called like the golden triangle or something along these lines. But basically what it means is, if you might have seen it on Instagram, they have this guide. If you divide your image and put these 6 lines on, as you can see on the screen, where they intersect, these are the points that our eyes just enjoy to look at. So if you see things that are positioned on those dots, people will just enjoy the photo more. It'll get a better response. Again, it depends on the context of your photo. For instance, this boy here, he's running. If he was positioned on the right hand side, so the other 2 dots, then it would feel uncomfortable because he's not running into space. He would be cut off by the end of the frame. And so you would feel like the audience would feel that. So you really want to say, like, you really want to think about how you're framing your subject and how it evokes those kind of emotions. So if I was interviewing someone, for instance, maybe instead of having them central, I would position them a bit to the left with the body face, so they would be speaking kind of this way, and then they're kind of talking into space, so it kind of uses them same rules. But then what I would also say is, you know, you can break the rule of thirds. It's like maybe an instance when you really would is if you really wanted to highlight symmetry. Because say, oh, that was my phone, sorry guys. If there is maybe, I don't know, you're doing a wedding and someone has a heart like this, you know, you there can really place it so that it's emphasizing that symmetry. Or maybe there's another creative reason why you want to kind of break the rule of thirds. But again, it's just a guide. It's useful to know, and then it's useful also to ignore as well. Okay.
Okay, now we're gonna talk a little bit about angles. So obviously the kind of angle you use makes a big impact on the image and how it affects the viewer. So kind of the most used angle is just the eye level. As now we're talking eye level, and now every time you have an interview situation, you want to make sure that your subject, the person you're interviewing, is on the same level as the camera. You don't want to be lower or higher, because that just has a very kind of odd impact. So if you put the camera quite low and you shoot from a lower angle, the subject will appear more dominant, more authoritarian even, because you look from below, so it puts the person in a more powerful position, as Ellie just demonstrates perfectly. And if you shoot the person from a high angle, that's going to be the exact opposite, as you can also see in Ellie's beautiful face. I mean, that's, you just look down upon the person, and that's, sometimes it can be quite useful. But also imagine, that's how adults look at children. So it's a bit of a kind of, it's, kind of like looking from above. So you raise your level above someone else, which can be quite useful if that's what you want to portray in the certain shot. Then, of course, there's the worm's eye. I mean, that's just the more extreme. The worm's eye is just a very, very low angle, like super low angle. It can look kind of odd. Then canted is kind of like, it's, doing this kind of thing, which can be used in a more experimental setting or something. Someone feels a bit like vertigo, someone feels a bit, nausea, whatever, and then you can play around and just make the shot a bit more kind of interesting in that sense. But yeah, generally speaking, when it comes to like interviews, you would use the eye level. And then the bird's eye is the last one. That's kind of when you want to show, like, for example, a wide shot and you want to show a scenery, even when it comes to nature or there's like a group of people, sometimes just to give you an overview of how the situation looks like.
Basic camera shots. That's me. Okay, so there's a variety of shots that you can use, and you probably want to use a variety to keep it interesting. Maybe you would use the extreme wide shot, like Alex mentioned before, if you want to introduce a location, because it gives a good overview of the place. Normally that would be one of maybe your first shots. And then we have the wide shot. That's just where it's a little bit smaller, but it's still showing off a lot of the location. Again, great to place your subject in its context. And then we get closer to the medium and the medium close-up. This is more where we're engaging with the subject. We're seeing more of their emotion. But again, we're maintaining a little bit of context and location. And then we have close-up and extreme close-up. So close-up, you would use like emotion, like to show emotion, get all those facial expressions. And then extreme close-up to like show the tears, So I would say that the most important thing, like using the angles and like using the camera shots, you want to get a variety mix in there. And anything that you see from a different angle, any of these shots that are shot from a different angle, that they'll be a bit more interesting than what, like, basically if you are showing something in a new way, then people will be more interested. So if I'm looking at a guitar from a different angle, people will just engage with that more than if they were seeing it as they normally see it. Another note is about camera shots. You might want to highlight detail and things like that with close-ups and extreme close-ups. And again, people aren't used to seeing things so close up. So I don't know, it just makes it interesting.
All right, so now we'll talk about lighting. Make sure that the light source is always in front of the person's face and not behind the person's face. So don't do it as I am doing now. I mean, the light should not be behind the subject. Kind of not a good example right now, but it's just something to keep in mind for interviews especially. And there's certain there's like a three-way light. There's certain like the key lights and so on. There's certain settings you can have, but I just want to emphasize, I would not stress too much about lighting. Lighting is a very, very important aspect of filmmaking, maybe the most important aspect of filmmaking and photography. Without light, there is no image, obviously, there's just darkness, but especially in the beginning, if you just make like a very short kind of video that's more it's not supposed to be a very professional kind of video, I wouldn't worry about putting in a lot of technology. As you can see in this picture, I wouldn't, you don't have to put all these different like soft boxes and so on. I think it can be beneficial, but I also want to emphasize, I use a lot of daylight, and I do think that daylight can be quite useful, but it always depends. But I want to make sure also the direction the light comes from makes an impact on the image. If you have light from the from the front, it kind of can look a bit boring. So sometimes putting the light source a bit further to the left or the right side can make more shadows on the face. Sometimes it makes the person look a bit better, a bit more pleasant, let's say. And I just want to quickly show you this one as well, just in terms of lighting. That's a good example of how not to do it. The left side, that's actually from a Zoom call, by the way. So it's also something you can take away for Zoom calls in the future, how to look better or more professional in a Zoom call, in the way of, having the light source in front of your face. which I should have done, but I don't have the possibility in this room. But you know, if you have a window on your left side, maybe turn the camera around. Because you can see in this one, I mean, I actually see it quite a lot in YouTube videos sometimes, that people don't put the light source right in front of their face. And if they do, it looks way better. I mean, it's a big difference in quality. It's a very simple thing, but actually it makes such a big difference. Just to kind of, you know, keep that in mind.
Okay, sound. So again, every element is important, but this feels also like one of the most important because people don't notice good sound. If you go to the cinema and, well, maybe some people do, but and you watch a film, it's very rare unless people are soundy people and to come out and someone to compliment the sound. But people notice bad sound. So bad sound is kind of the thing that you want to avoid. You want to make sure, well, it's very easy to make some instant improvements. You want to make sure that there's not background noise. So when you're on location, you want to just have a little listen. Is there, you know, like a fan in the background? Is it really windy? These kind of things. You also might want to see what microphone you have to your availability. Again, this is not to put in technical barriers, because a lot of people have been recording even via Zoom or something, so audio quality in a lot of like little films has gone down, maybe just because of those barriers. But the most important thing is the story. So as long as the sound is like legible enough to serve the story, then you know you're doing great. But yeah, the better you sound, you know, the better it is. Maybe you want to be in a carpeted room with lots of furniture to make sure you're not having any kind of echo or anything, or it sounds a bit tinny. I'm saying words like I say this as someone that doesn't really have sound as a strength. If you do have availability to some equipment, I would say you really want to invest maybe in a little lapel mic, so one that is on somebody, or you can just place like a shotgun microphone on the top of your camera if you have a camera. I would, if you are building kind of your gear, then maybe I'll go for both of those things so you can have that flexibility. But again, it's okay if you don't have availability to that. And I just think, oh yeah, it says on the screen, I'm just reading that clapping helps synchronize in the edit. This is also a great tip. And also, it's great to just record 1 minute of the room so that when you're in the edit, when you're cutting together, you have that to use flexibly. Also, there's now loads of stuff available online, so you can add kind of sound effects and things that can really just add that extra element, dimensional element into your story. I would make sure that yeah, basically just that it's not really windy, and that I would always do a test beforehand so that you know what you're recording is not going to be wasted.
Okay, let's talk a bit about editing programs. So the one I think both of us use the most is Adobe Premiere, which is a great program a lot of people use, but you have to pay for it. So if you don't want to pay for a program, it's absolutely fine. I do want to say the programs, Windows Movie Maker, which is I think on almost every, it's kind of pre-installed sometimes, but it's also a free program, so you can download it quite easily. And iMovie on Apple products is also quite a good program. It's quite simple to use, so you don't have to use a more professional, say, or more expensive program like Adobe Premiere or Sony Vegas or Final Cut. Final Cut is also for Apple. But yeah, again, like you don't have to use the most professional programs at all. Mostly it's just about cutting things, literally cutting the video, and also sometimes putting some, you know, putting in a dissolve, or, you know, putting in some titles and so on. But, you know, even if you don't have any program at all, you can totally make an amazing video with just one take. There's, you know, quite a few films or videos that have been made with only one take. And I think that's really impressive. There's one film that was shot in Berlin, which is called Victoria, and the entire film was actually shot in one take. So, and that's an entire feature film, you know. So you can totally just shoot a video or even a short film or even a feature film in one take. It's obviously a lot of effort, but yeah, I just want to emphasize that you can totally it actually even makes you more creative sometimes. But editing is a very good skill, so if you can learn how to edit, I would definitely recommend to learn a few things. And there is an app called Power Director which you can use on your phone. I don't know if Ellie wants to add anything in terms of editing.
No, I just thought you had a great point about like working in your limitations, and those limitations kind of being kind of a catalyst for those creative ideas, because it's really difficult to think of an idea when anything is an option, but when you kind of have those boundaries, it's so much easier to kind of form those ideas. So limitations can be kind of helpful guiding tools as well.
Definitely. Okay.
Task one.
Task one. So now up to you guys. Whoever's watching this, we would like to have a little challenge for you. You can do it now or you can do it later. Don't worry, we won't check it. We won't check if you do it or not. But we would love if you would record a video on your own and maybe share some of your stories, share your international stories, be it, you know, with the European Solidarity Corps or with Erasmus Plus projects, or now in the kind of Corona, COVID times, maybe you want to share some of your stories, how you coped in the current situation, and just share some of your stories. So yeah, like the thing we'd like to ask you to do is to think about the story you would like to share. Think about, you know, you can discuss with your friends, or even if you make a video together, you can get together in a small group and discuss your ideas, or you can just write down your own ideas. And as we already told you, it's an amazing kind of brainstormy thing to, you know, narrow down your idea into just one sentence. And if you can narrow down one sentence, then most likely you can work from there and develop the idea a bit further in more visual ways. But in the beginning, I wouldn't worry a lot about the visuals. I would first worry about the kind of story you want to tell, and then later on you can develop some more visual ideas.
So we've already mentioned task 2 of condensing it into one sentence. So on to task 3. Task 3 is to plan a 60-second video about your European experience. So you want to begin by having a bit of a brainstorm. However you do that, take a walk, grab a coffee. It doesn't have to be anything formal. And then you can start getting something down on paper. So that storyboard or that script, I would say they're optional, especially for something 60 seconds. But it is great to have and great practice to do, and great to fully form your ideas. So what you want to do is research your target audience. It's important that you know who you're telling your story to, because that changes how you deliver the message, and know what their interests are, things like this. But of course, this audience is imagined because we don't really know who's watching our film, but we can have some idea, and hopefully it'll appeal to them. Think about the story you want to tell. You want to think about it maybe in 3 parts: the beginning, the middle, and end. So some kind of introduction, some kind of problem, conflict, and then some kind of resolution. Or maybe you want to remix that. You don't have to do that. That's just the conventional way. But a 60 seconds is like a whiskey shot. So maybe you want something powerful, something punchy, but again, don't put too much pressure on those ideas, because you know it's meant to be fun. And then you want to think about, when you've got that, your storyboarding, this is when you want to think about your framing. Again, thinking about what story you want to tell and what emotion you want to convey, and how framing your subject is going to evoke these emotions. think about variety, think about wide shots for locations and introductions, think about the pace of your film. That'll, like, if you're having some kind of slow cinema, you know, you're gonna have a different amount of shots. In a 60 seconds, you could have that in one shot, or 60 seconds, you could have 60 different frames, you know? So you really want to think, what is the emotion you're conveying? How can your frames support that? Okay, so that is task 3.
And now let's start filming. So now you have your idea, now you have your little storyboard or your script or whatever you wrote down, maybe you took some notes, and now you can start filming. Don't overthink it, well, do plan enough, but don't overplan or overthink it, especially if it's a short video. It's good to focus on the main aspects. It's supposed to be fun, you know, filmmaking is supposed to be fun. It's a great process. It's one of the most beautiful and fun way to share stories, and it's engaging. And whatever story you have, whatever story you want to put out there, whether it's going to be on social media or whether you want to make an actual short film to post on, you know, or to, you know, submit it to film festivals, whatever it is, it's good to have a great idea, to have a good story, and just share what you want to bring out of the world. And we wish you a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoy your process. And now Ellie will add some last words.
My last words are, I agree with everything Alex has said, and she has encapsulated it great. And don't overthink it, let it be fun. Just keep shooting, make bad films, and, you know, like, don't put those limits on yourself, because as soon as you build those expectations, then that's when it becomes a bit more challenging. So yeah, that's all. Thank you very much. Good luck, guys.